Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call to order the Board of Finance for Monday, April 24th at 5:35 p.m. And the first item on the agenda is the agenda, of course, and we were actually hoping that the agenda could be moved with a bit of an amendment. We'd like to move 4.14, the community infrastructure projects, up early in the agenda. It could be, the first item after the consent agenda, 4.005, because at least one of the later items is sort of dependent on the community infrastructure approval. So I think the conversation will flow better if we've done that first before we do the Moran frame discussion. So, and Kara is here to lead that discussion. So, that would be my preference if someone would move the agenda with that change.
Right, happy to make a motion to amend and adopt the agenda as recommended.
Thank you, Councilor McGee. Second by Councilor Jang. Any further discussion of the agenda? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The only other time we met is the new Board of Finance. There weren't too many people in the room. It's exciting to have everyone in person, and we have a meaty agenda together for tonight. Before going to that, we do have a public forum, and former City Councilor Sharon Busher is with us and has her hand raised. So go ahead, Sharon.
Yes, can you hear me?
Short public comment, that'd be great. Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, very good. Just a quick question. When you have the item, I think it's 4.04, which talks about the items that now are eligible to be reimbursed with TIF, you talk about what the audit revealed, and there were ineligible items. And I understood that, but how are those going to get paid? That wasn't clear in the memo, and if it had been discussed before, I've forgotten. So I don't want to belabor your agenda because I know it's a meaty one, but it would be helpful to know how those are going to be paid. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. And Director Brian Pine is here to speak to the TIF item, and I'll try to speak to that briefly. Any other public forum comments? I am not seeing anyone in the room. I don't think there's anyone else online. Check that. Does not appear so. So I'm going to close the public forum and move to our maybe too abbreviated consent agenda, which is really just the Board of Finance minutes for April 10th, and would welcome a motion. We're ready to approve that.
So moved.
Great, thank you, President Paul. Is there a second? Thank you, Councilor Barlow. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have approved the consent agenda. Okay, we will now move to the item that was moved up to the beginning of the agenda, the community infrastructure projects. Hopefully this is fresh in people's mind. We had a work session about this last week, and as promised, we are back to try to move this forward together. And again, of course, we're looking tonight for a recommendation for council approval next week if we're ready to move on it. I would just be clear that with many of these items, certainly, I think probably without exception, every one of these items will come back for further votes from the council when we have contracts to approve, when we have design contracts, construction contracts. So but what we are looking for tonight, next week, is important directional approval that we should be moving in these directions with these allocations. And with that, hopefully that was a helpful summary for you, Kara. But what, you want anything else? Add anything else before we dive in?
No, we can dive right in. I'll kick us off a little bit. Refresher, the city received 27 million of American Rescue Plan Act funds. The initial iteration of that legislation was quite narrow, mostly related to revenue replacement and COVID and pandemic response. Since then, the final iteration of the legislation has been released along with a lot of FAQs that were gathered from municipalities across the country and has broadened the projects that this funding is allowed to be used for. So in light of that, and in light of our ARPA survey that was sent out and received almost 4,000 responses. And of note in that and related to this item is our BIPOC respondents chose community infrastructure as one of their top selections, spaces where people could enjoy food, music, and gathering. So the city sat down, and as we know, we set aside $2 million in our budget resolution for fiscal year 23. $2 million sounds like a lot of money, but for projects like this, it's not actually a lot of money. We had many competing demands within the city, many departments with many great ideas. We did end up narrowing it down to 5 projects geographically spread out throughout the city. It involves 3 investments in public parks and 2 new indoor community rooms, all of which are in qualified census tracts. And the next slide, will give you a little bit. Can you do a presentation mode on that or no? Or maybe just, thank you. So we have the Fletcher Free Library that has their new North End branch, and they were looking for $50,000. There are some walls in that facility that they'd like to remove to have larger gathering spaces in there. We have the Redstone Cottage. We have Director White here. And we would like to build an annex onto that cottage that would allow for a community space and another gathering space. As we move slightly further south, we have Roosevelt Park, which we desire to put a pavilion in there. It would be open on the sides. It would be a shade structure and a water protection structure. It would aid in food dispersal that's happening in that park. And then Waterworks Park Moran frame amenities include signage and some upgraded walkways to allow the public to enjoy that space more readily. The City Hall Park kiosk, as you all know, that park was always envisioned to have some sort of food service in it. I'm currently have been working with a restaurateur in the city who is interested in donating the proceeds, is interested in operating there and donating the proceeds to COTS. So we would be looking to set up the RFP in that sort of manner to at least have partial profits donated to a community nonprofit as sort of an ongoing way to utilize these funds. And as we get to the south end, 405 Pine Street, the BCA building, we are looking to build a community room with an industrial sized kitchen, which from my perspective, working with micro businesses and entrepreneurs, they're always looking for a space to prepare foods, to test their foods out in markets. It will also be able to be used as a full community space, to have gatherings with food there. And as many of you know, we don't currently have a community space in the South End. So that really adds to that amenity there. And then the next page is very rough. It shows you some blueprints that we have and some of the ideas that we haven't quite moved forward with in more detail yet, pending this discussion with Board of Finance and Council. And you can slide down on that a little bit for the other three. And now I'm ready to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Kara. The floor is open for discussion. Councilor Barlow.
Thank you, and thank you for recapping that. The mayor answered one of my questions, which is we'll have an opportunity to revisit specifics on spending
Yes.
as things come.
Design, so for example, that pavilion design is an initial design. It's not quite right sized for the park. It won't exactly look like that. So as we get into issuing RFPs for these projects and all of that, yes, this will all come back.
And the other one, the one that's the sort of has the least specificity and has the biggest price tag are the Moran Waterworks Park
Yeah, yeah.
amenities. So I'm wondering if there's any vision on beyond like a walkways and signage, what that might be.
Yeah, I don't know if Director Pine wants to jump in on that. You don't have to.
So I'm happy to speak to that.
Okay.
I mean, so there, we have all sorts of visions and millions of dollars of visions and thoughts for what could be great there. I think what we are proposing is instead of jumping to conclusions about what that should be, that we set aside a significant kind of foundation of funds to anchor a second phase. We expect to be able to raise privately 2 to 3 times that. So this could be somewhere between $3 and $5 million second phase ultimately. Obviously, depending on how much we're successful at raising, that's one thing that could determine how much is in there, but also that with the city commitment, we would be able to start a discussion with the community that would include these interactive Friends of Fame events where we start using the space this summer, and that through the actual sort of experimentation with events and activities down there, combined with a resource planning design effort, bringing on a designer, that we and some active efforts at securing other funds, that we would settle on a phase 1 somewhere over the next, I wish, Samantha unfortunately is on vacation this week, but I think Brian said probably 6 to 9 months from now, we would be able to say to you, this is what we actually think will get done. So we have lots of ideas, and maybe Brian's presentation has some more detail on that, I'm not sure, but that's, I think it's important. The right way to do this is not to be overly committal at this point until we've done some planning with the community and develop the budget a little further.
Okay, that's helpful.
President Paul.
Thank you. So the first thing I think is a very well written memo. Thank you. I think the fact that we're really looking at, as you well documented, from the new north end to the south end and everything in between, which I think is one of the best ways to be able to build broad community support and spread the money around. And you're right, it seems like a lot of money, but when you start breaking it down, all of a sudden it's not so much money, particularly when you're talking about some of the things that you're planning on doing. And I think they're all great. I mean, I think that I am really impressed with the fact that the kiosk, which was in City Hall Park, which was probably the most controversial aspect, well, not the most, the trees. My apologies.
Laura.
Yeah, it was about the trees, but besides the trees, was the kiosk. And there was a thought that this was going to be yet a way to commercialize the park. And the fact that, this is, I would hope that there would be a strong way of conveying to the community what that kiosk, what the greater mission is of that kiosk. Number one, I think it would probably be great for business. And number two, it would send a great message to people. And something that, engaging in community and that sort of education, information, I mean, everything sounds, it's come a long way since its original envision, the way that it was visioned. So, I'm happy to make the motion. If others want to speak to this further, I'm happy to wait.
Why don't you kick it off with a motion? That'd be great.
If I may, this, as the motion is written on the memo at the bottom, you'll see 250, I believe. The words Roosevelt Park have been left out of the motion. So you could just amend the motion to reflect that 250,000 is to be dedicated to Roosevelt Park Pavilion, and then we can clean this up.
Yeah.
The council.
My apologies, the typos, right?
So in other words, it's just simply left off.
Yes.
The others are correct.
That is correct.
So I would just make a motion as recommended on board docs with the amendment of an additional $250,000 to Roosevelt Park. What did you call that? Roosevelt Park Pavilion. That's my motion.
Thank you, President Paul. Is there a second by Councilor McGee? Discussion. Councilor Jane, go ahead.
I know that we haven't had the chance to go to the cottage. I don't exactly know where it is. Tell us the
Cottage.
cottage, no?
The red.
Right next to
Yeah, yeah.
Cambridge.
Oh, that greenhouse.
Yes,
Yes.
that's it.
That's a good one. So, I mean, it's in the old North Bend, technically.
It is.
Yeah. So.
It's the word, it's the definitions.
It's in the new north.
Yes, I know. but
Your
I think
neighbors are next door.
he's receiving basically $50,000. So, I mean, I appreciate you try to make some equity here. I think it's always. But this ARPA fund itself also, I think, made it very clear, creating opportunities for physical activities. I think we're doing very well, but also should expand to improve the lives of those disappropriate impacted.
Sure.
And I don't see that element in here. This is just a great physical infrastructures, for gathering, but it doesn't technically improve the life.
Directly, yeah.
So it seems that it's missing in here. We're just wondering, what else have you done to compensate?
Yes, exactly. So I would point to the $1 million that we just distributed to our local nonprofits. And spread that out to a broad variety of nonprofits. Our grading criteria for that grant heavily favored BIPOC community and work done in those communities hardest hit. And that's how that grant was written. And so if you look at the 3 million total that's being spent, I would say that 1 million was very targeted to helping those communities survive that had been the hardest. And that this 2 million is creating space that they too and others can enjoy.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think
my
that's
pleasure.
interesting. And also, I mean, I feel like many of the physical spaces in the city of Burlington, people have to pay fees to access. Now, within these contracts, are there ways for city departments to waive those fees, at least for a certain time?
Yes, there's absolutely ways to have fees reduced, waived, reduced for nonprofits who might want to use the spaces. Some of them are in parks anyway, so they're generally open to anyone, and on the waterfront as well. That is obviously an outdoor space as well. Yeah. And when we looked at these projects, we were definitely looking to maximize access.
And I appreciate the one City Hall Park with carts.
Yes.
I'm interested in the
Yes.
because it sounds very.
And we'll bring that, once that RFP gets written and we have someone there, we've definitely been working with local restaurants to see what the interest level would be, and we do think the interest level is there.
And again, well written. Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy to support this.
Awesome. Thank you, Councilor Jane. If there's no further comments, and we are going to have another motion on Moran, so we're not done with this discussion totally, but so Seeing no further comments now, we'll go to a vote on the motion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Cara, for your hard work on this. Okay, this brings us to several CEDO items. 4.01 is the UDAG budget amendment, and welcome, Brian. Why don't you tee this up?
Thank you. Brian Pine, CEDO Director, and I'm here to first start out with the budget amendment related to funds that we refer to as UDAG, which is a federal program. That acronym stands for Urban Development Action Grants. This was only a grant program available in the 1980s. It was highly competitive. Burlington was once referred to by HUD as the UDAG capital of New England, because for a little teeny city, CEDO went after every single UDAG grant we could get. And when you think of places like the Maltex building and Corporate Plaza, which is where Key Bank is next to Henry's Diner, and a number of other properties that were developed or redeveloped with UDAG funds. It was a unique program. The federal government would essentially grant the municipality these funds, and it was understood and expected that they would then be reloaned by the municipality to a economic development project, and the repayments of those funds would be available by the municipality to fund future projects, future community economic development projects. So as you see here, the allocation that we're planning to do from UDAG funds, which were repaid in 2017, is to, we're asking for your approval for the budget amendment. It's a budget neutral amendment to move UDAG funds from restricted cash accounts, $950,715 of UDAG, to the Moran capital account. And this is in accordance with the promissory note between CEDO and BED, which was entered into to outline the contributions owed by BED for the cost of cleanup, basically remediation, abatement of contamination found at the Moran frame site. And so essentially what we're doing is we're using UDAG funds to lend it to BED, and BED will be paying it back in equal yearly installments for the next 8 years. In addition, we are requesting $632,500 in UDAG funds from the restricted cash account that would be basically moved into CEDO's budget for non-Moran UDAG activities. And that essentially means funds that we would have available for actually taking the next phase of the project. So essentially doing design, doing conceptual designs, doing the work that Director Al-Nasrawi referred to earlier around the next phase of Moran, basically. So even though it says non-Moran UDAG activities, we are using some of that for purposes of taking us to the next level with the project.
So excellent, thank you. Floor is open for discussion, questions, motion. Go ahead, Councilor Jack.
How we ensure that these funds, utilizing them this way for Moran will not have like a replicated effect in the future.
So eligibility and things like that. We have a pretty, I think, a thorough review from a former city attorney who now works on TIF-related issues, Richard Hessler, who opined that UDAG funds have, the expectation is that they be used for eligible activities. And when we define eligible activities, we look to the requirements of the Federal Community Development Block Grant Program, which Moran, because of its location, is eligible use. So that we've determined is eligible.
Happy to make the motion as indicated.
Great, thank you, Councilor Jang. A second. Right, Councilor Barlow, thank you. Further discussion? President Paul, go ahead.
Thanks. I mean, I just have a question because I may have missed this. Where does $632,500, it's a 26-page document. I didn't see that number. Right here, it's the MOU. It's actually, I think, 2 copies of the same MOU. One is signed and one isn't, which is fine. As for, it makes it look like there's a lot of pages. But there is a fair number. Where is that number somewhere in here that I missed?
I think the MOU speaks specifically to the BED's
The
responsibilities for the
950.
cleanup for the
Right.
950. So the additional 632,500 is essentially asking for approval. The city's accounting system essentially views the UDAG funds as restricted cash account that can't be basically used or obligated for anything else. And what we're asking to do is to move those funds into our budget so we could have them available to undertake work related to the next phase of Moran. And so we'd be coming back to the council to ask for those approvals on, for instance, design contracts and whatnot. So that's really to set us up so that we have the cash available to know that we have money available to do the next phase.
So, I mean, it's not a round number.
Right.
So there must be a reason for 632,500.
It's the remaining balance of the UDAG funds.
Okay,
That's what.
that's
Yeah.
the answer to the question. So that's why
Yes.
you're taking what's left.
Yes.
Okay,
Exactly.
alrighty, got it.
And our goal is to usually invest them in ways that ensure we're going to see, we like it to be revolving. We don't want this resource to be going away. The BED loan is a great example because we're seeing that money come back. And the future council and future CETA will be talking about how to ensure that it be used for the intended purpose.
So what happens if the 632,500, which is being taken because that's what's left, doesn't get used? Can you use it for, I mean, you're basically
about-
taking it for your budget.
Exactly. Not for our operating budget though.
Yeah.
Only for capital costs. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would, so if it wasn't used in FY23, of which there's only
It carries
what's
over.
left.
Exactly. It
Okay.
carries over. These are funds that have been with us since 2017 and they're restricted accounts. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It probably, I mean, maybe I'm the, I mean, there may very well be others that are interested. I
Just
think that sort of background is probably fairly germane as to why that number is not just it's obviously not a round number, or pick it out of a hat kind of number. Nor is it something with the sources and uses kind of budget.
That's right.
And the reason is because that's what's there. So it probably, I don't know, again, I might be the only one. But I think it's just interesting to know why the amount is there. But that's all. Thank you. Thanks for answering my questions.
Thank you, President Paul. Councilor Jan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, what we shared, Mr. Richard Hessler, also resolved this letter. It was dated since 2018. I think my previous question was like recent.
We don't have a recent because the project is the same, so we didn't ask for a new opinion on that. But Jared, this asking who's Assistant City Attorney Colorado sitting right here.
Have we reviewed this? I actually met with Richard prior to submitting this memo and we're both still of the same opinion. Baseball.
Thank you. Great. There's no further questions. Seeing none, go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Excellent. This leads into 4.02. Frame budget amendment. Back to you, Brandon.
Sure, I'll attempt to explain what is really kind of a complicated scenario here, but we're requesting the Board of Finance and eventually the council next week to approve a budget amendment to reflect the use of eligible Moran frame expenses or invoices, I should say, totaling $500,842.46, to be precise, to be paid from the Waterfront TIF bond that was issued through the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank, which was a 7.8 million, actually two different bonds, but the total was 7.8 million as part of the resolution of the state auditor's report on the Waterfront TIF that identified that we as a city had some essentially accounting errors, if you will. And this is essentially allowing for or enabling the city to in order to correct those errors. Basically what we're taking is we're taking ineligible expenses and covering that with other sources, which earlier in public forum, former Councilor Busher asked to detail how we're paying for those ineligible expenses. I would ask you to look at the memo that CAO Shad issued in February that explains the resolution to the state auditor's report, because in there it details the way the sources of funds that are being used to cover the ineligible expenses. So basically it freed up TIF dollars from projects which were, or I should say project costs that were ineligible, and is making those dollars available for Moran related expenses. So this is a budget amendment that allows us to comply with the state auditor and ensure that the Moran invoices can get processed properly.
Great, thank you. That's me.
Thanks for the fund. I guess my question is, what was the source of funds for covering these invoices before we came up with this?
So
Solution.
we paid for them, basically, we billed them to TIF. So we basically paid for them with the bond proceeds from either the 2012 or the 2014 or 2016 bonds that were issued. So we have right now, we've basically pulled those out of TIF, and this is ensuring that we can use those dollars for Moran expenses that are eligible, which have already been deemed eligible by the state auditor, by municipal bond bank, and by the bond council. So the city's lawyer that looks at these issues. And for, again, how the ineligible expenses were covered, that memo, which I think is February 13th-ish, outlines it. It's attached as part of this packet.
Councilor Jane.
I don't have that memo in front of me, but what I remember is this, and tell me if it's correct. We will be paying for those ineligible, expenses to one, the fees accumulated from the banks, like the interest, right? And second, unassigned fund balance, and then with the third one, which I.
It is pretty much unassigned fund balance, the balance of interest from the checking account, and then unexpended sources from Waterfront Access North.
And Waterfront, thank you, Waterfront Access was, is part of it. This model plan is part of it. Okay. Thank you for being great. Finding a way of doing this. Yeah.
I know it's as clear as mud, but it's a bit like you get it. It's not really.
Thanks. I mean, I know this has sort of been asked before, so forgive me if I ask it again. Are you fairly confident now that there is a system in place so that we're not going to find ourselves in this situation? Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
many
I
systems
was
in
gonna say,
place.
many levels. It used to just be staff doing the best they could.
Yeah.
UDAG reviews every single invoice and make sure it's being handled perfectly.
Okay.
So
Great.
they're sticklers.
Yes.
Well, that's
What you
Good.
want,
Pay 'em
what you
for it.
want.
Good.
That's me, happy to make the motion. Recommended.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second by President Paul. Excellent. Further discussion. So thank you, the Board of Finance, for working through this with us. Obviously not not something we're excited to have to be doing either, but it does, as Catherine just said, I think it's not just the media cap, we have additional capacity within the current treasurer's office. We have segregated discrete accounts out to isolate the flow of funds. And it's really a pointed number, plus just the overall context of the clerk treasurer's office is different than when a lot of these errors were made back 10 years ago. So you certainly have my my commitment as well that we don't want to see this repeated, and that we're working hard to ensure that. So with that, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The next item is updating the tax recurrent financing district consulting services contract with White and Burke, another one of the resources we have for getting tip work correct, less on the compliance side than other elements. David White continues to play a big role week to week on the team, and it's a critical year in the city place infrastructure project. You want to say anything else about it?
Just that the service, you get what you pay for, and we think it's a service that David and his firm provides is top quality, top notch. We also want to make sure we only pay them for what they need to be paid for, so they're not here tonight. Your regular staff are here, and I would say that the investment that we're making, which is all covered by TIF revenue, this is what's called a related cost. Obviously is well worth it. We'll get into that in the conversation on the next item on your agenda, which is the bond issue. The notes.
Brian, discussion, motion. Go ahead.
Happy to make the motion. It's recommended.
Thank you, Councilor McGee. So second from Councilor Channing. Is there any discussion? Councilor Channing, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I love about the check and balances into the memo. I appreciate that, to just make sure that we are doing our due diligence. And was just wondering across all the boards and commissions in the city, which one is dealing with state? Which one of the boards or commission in the city?
You're probably it,
This is why.
or the finance, the city council are really where we go. I don't think there's anyone else who's. Yeah. You've got a number of staff working on it, and you've got White and Burke as the consultant. And obviously the city attorney's office.
I mean, that led me to ask another question, like how is Weidenberg selected in the first place? Was it like to RFP or they are the same organization?
That's a great question. What we did in, I've worked with this firm since, I think 2008, 2009, they tried to develop a different concept of Moran, and that didn't come to fruition. Then we together, 2011, developed the city's application to establish a TIF district for the downtown, and that was a CEDO, White and Burke. We went through a selection process then, and so we sort of set the groundwork. We got that TIF district, and I don't know if the firm did a whole lot of work after that, the city, 2011, 2012, maybe.
Until this,
Till we brought back for this.
Jeff
Jeff Glassberg did this
left
before.
so you recall we've actually, I mean, the City Place project, of course, has had a long history at this point. We had Ken Braverman, I think before your time, Councilor Jang on the department, then Jeffrey Glassberg worked for a number of years, and I don't think we had contracts during this administration with David White until Jeffrey Glassberg left in summer of 21. And so I think I don't recall exactly if we had any competitive process at that time. I think we may not have, simply because this is one of those unfortunate, not ideal situations in Vermont where there just are very few professionals that are qualified for this pretty specialized work. And so we judged the fairness of this contract based on its comparison, based on the hourly rate being charged, based on comparison to other comparable work that we've contracted, as opposed to being able to have sort of competitive bids on it. I think it's an procurement guidelines for that reason why we initiated it. That's my memory.
Yeah, part of the justification for sole source was that this firm has handled, I think it's either 7 out of the last 8 or 8 out of the last 9 TIF districts in Vermont. And they're the only entity available, really. So we're in some ways fortunate because they're based just down the street and many of them live in the city, the folks who work here. So we have them look at that's really fun.
And I mean, basically, we are in April, and this contract is from January to December. Why it's coming now? Why is it coming now?
Honestly, it's just a question of bandwidth and capacity. And we were able to meet the expenses till now, so we're at the point now we're running out of money. Plus, we then I should add, we had to go to Vermont Economic Progress Council to get their approval to increase what are called related costs, because essentially the project has been through a very long development, sort of pre-development stage. So all those expenses that were incurred previously, while they were really important and they were legit, we had to kind of redo it again, brought David on. So we need to get extra capacity.
I really appreciated David's way of explaining TIP to a 3rd grader. I think. You nailed it, like this.
Thanks. I don't know if you have these numbers handy, but I just wanted to make sure. So last year in March of 2022, we approved $100,000 then related to do with Whiteburg. And I'm not sure if that was all for the TIF or if it was something else. It seems like it was city, downtown, and waterfront. In July of 21, we allocated 200,000 from July of 21 to December of 22. And then there was another amendment in March of 22 for another 100,000. Now this is January to December for 120. So I guess I don't need the answer now. I mean, I'm happy to support this, but I do think that it would be helpful if we sort of try to divide up, if we can, what is downtown, what is waterfront, so that there is an idea of exactly what Whiteburg is being paid. This isn't a criticism of their work. This is more just simply trying to account, because these are large dollar amounts, and it's hard. It's very easy to lose track. Actually, this one, the 200,000 was from July of 21 to December of 22, but in March of 22, there was an amendment for another 100,000.
I can explain. I think the amendment should have been to clarify that the original one was just for City Place.
Okay.
And then we came back in March of 22 because the scope of services expanded to include the downtown TIF.
Well, actually, the 200, yeah, I don't know. I'd have to really read this closely, but it just seems like there's a lot going on there, and I realize it's all going to the same place, but it would probably be helpful. And again, just simply perhaps for even better transparency, better accounting, as long as they're working on watching every single TIF dollar, we should probably know which is going to where. Even if it means that we're literally sending Whiteburg 2 checks.
And I'll be happy to run a report as well, showing what has gone to downtown and what has gone to waterfront, maybe over the last 2 years, if that would help.
Yeah, I mean, when you can.
Yeah,
No
we
worries.
can do that.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, and we're ready for a motion here, you do it all, there you go, still.
We don't.
Don't think we have a motion yet.
I think we did.
Thank you. Feeling kind of.
Made a motion, sorry. You second, yes, right, okay, so we'll go to a vote, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried, thank you. Carries unanimously. 4.04, Brian's almost out of the hot seat here, application for public improvement bonds or notes for the city's waterfront tip district. I'm happy to speak to this as well. This is really a significant milestone in this, like we've just been discussing, long effort with City Place. This approval we're seeking from the Board of Finance and the Council next week is the approval to go out and take this consequential step of borrowing the $18 million that the voters approved back in 2016 for City Place related public infrastructure improvements. I'll leave it to the questions to see how far into the details you want to go. Just at a high level, just want to say, I think the way that Brian and David and the team of finance professionals that we work with on these issues, Catherine, as well as our outside consultants, have found a way here that is quite elegant in allowing us to meet our statutory deadlines, to incur this debt, while preserving flexibility, a very zero cost to the city essentially, and very limited, really with the city well protected, for us to finalize the decision on exactly how much long-term TIF debt we borrow until two things happen. One, we hear about these big federal grant, a big federal grant that we are pursuing that could bring down the need for TIF borrowing. And then ultimately long-term. And then secondly, that City Place developers finalize their financing and their construction timing such that we know exactly how much long-term revenue the district is going to generate. And those two things will determine the ultimate size of the bond. Probably a year to 2 years from now, we'll be back seeking that long-term decision from the council at that time. And so I want to make sure that was clear, that there's another moment coming some ways down the road when the exact size of the long-term debt will be determined and when you'll have more information to review and sign off on in terms of confirming, that exactly how that long-term financing is going to work.
I would just add that the use of the notes is really an important part of this project or this approach versus bond. When you bond, you do a long-term commitment, 10, 20, 15 years, whatever the number is, you go way out. Whereas with notes, it's short-term financing that you then repay when you refinance and take on your long-term bond at that point. And that's what we're asking you for, is approval to do notes to raise. We need to meet this deadline of June 30th. If we don't borrow the funds by then, we're not, the time has run out. That's our absolute deadline.
Someone. All right, what's our attention? Okay, Councilor McGee.
Thank you. My only question was, we don't have an estimate yet in terms of what the public improvements are going to cost. I feel like in one of these conversations, some numbers have been tossed around, but we do have something like that.
Yeah, we do.
We do have a conceptual, pretty strong conceptual sense to.
Yeah, this amount here, the 18,840,000 is the projects that covers the project scope. We also have additional funds on top of that, which we've already secured from the congressionally directed spending dollars. We on top of this have an application that will go in early July for what's called the sales tax reallocation, which is state incentives to do this type of project to cover some public improvements. So altogether, it's it's the 18 plus the 12 CDS funds. So you're at 30 million there, and you've got, an incremental amount above that that's not very significant, but it'll completely rebuild Cherry Street from Battery to Winooski Avenue, and it will handle Bank Street from Pine to St. Paul, and then the two new streets, the connections on both Pine and St. Paul.
So 9 blocks total is the hope, is the goal. We've never been in a position to totally promise the public 9 blocks, but that was what we initially talked about 8 blocks when we went to the voters, made it clear what the kind of order of priority would be, and that it may not be possible to do it all. With the infusion of federal funds, we are now hopeful that we may be able to get to, in fact, 9 blocks, not 8. And, sounds like a huge number, $30 million, more than $3 million a block. But when you're talking about this sort of deep reconstruction at this level, that with inflation, that is not out of, that is consistent with the more than $2 million a block we spent on the St. Paul Street, which is our best sort of comparable in terms of, so we're feeling, there's bidding and there's some details to be refined there, but it's in that range.
Sure. My only reason I asked was just thinking about how the grant that the city's applied for could potentially offset the need for borrowing.
Absolutely. We're going to be as prudent and cost effective. So if we do see additional federal funds from this raise grant, you can see a much lower number when we come back to do the permanent financing for the bond. And that's our hope. And
Yeah, that'd be a positive thing for the ed fund, for our
Exactly.
revenues. If you're not needing to borrow that much for TIF, it would accelerate when we get a big tax infusion to both us and the ed fund.
because even though I should just getting a little wonky here, but even though this part of the district survives to 2035, once we're done with this project, there's no more projects necessarily that need to be funded with TIF because we've met our debt incurrence deadline. We can't then go out and borrow new money for TIF. So
Councilor Jay.
And, I know that there would be a return of investment for around $750,000 a year.
up to the city,
Yes,
at least that much.
at least.
But I would note that you're sunsetting the business personal property. And so when the TIF ends, that ends too. And so the new revenue, the windfall, will offset the loss in tax revenue from the business personal. Almost exactly, I think, 0.2-ish.
Yeah, that's good.
So basically they go hand to hand, like when it ends.
Exactly. We timed it that way on purpose. I mean, I should say, yeah, we did, yeah. You did, we did.
Someone did.
Yeah.
It was a while
A while
ago,
ago.
but we knew that was coming, yes.
Smart.
It was smart.
Yes.
It was smart.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing, good policy there, I think. as well.
Yes.
This next, just to make sure we're on the same page, that's the near-term deadline
Right.
with the waterfront, but
When
if
this-
when this just, we haven't spent the very sizable new infusion that will be coming when City Place is built and that TIF district expires. That is projected at
That's
something like,
you're right, that's 750 a year. Yeah, maybe more, maybe.
yeah, maybe, I mean, I'm right, maybe it's,
Maybe over $1 million, but it's somewhere between 750.
and that's just the municipal side of it, and the municipal
exactly.
side is twice that, so it's a lot.
But now, possibilities of anything going wrong here.
It's a big question.
The crystal ball that I look at says it could go wrong, but just because it's life. But we've got so many protections in place. So I think that's the key thing is what do we have in place to mitigate risk? And we're doing everything we can to mitigate risk to the city and the taxpayer. That's what we're doing here. And that's what this does. That's the way that we feel this structure is the best balance of both making sure we don't lose opportunity, leave anything on the table, but also ensuring that we structure it so that we only borrow what's needed to be borrowed to do the project.
And it's unfortunate that it will be done with the sea in a couple of years, right? But I think it would be imperative, beside my question, he was saying, what board and commission is looking into this too. Not only this part, people with expertise a little bit outside of these consultants. The implementation.
That's Mara.
Thank you. My question is one of mechanics. So the short-term project notes, we would basically borrow.
We find a local bank that would be willing to lend us the money.
18,840,000. And then depending on how much of that we needed to convert to long-term debt, we would decide based on the amount of raise grants that were awarded. Is that
Raise grants and
And the
in the
increment.
final. Back to Councilor Jang's question, like if somehow, as we speak right now, it is not the revenue, the tax revenue that's gonna flow from the City Place project is not 100% bankable, because they have not, that they're still working, as they've been quite public about. They still have not lined up all their financing. And until their financing is secured and locked in, their exact construction timetable could slip, could change. And so basically, to Councilor Jang's question, this allows the city to kind of continue to preserve to really ensure that we aren't borrowing more than the taxes are going to be generated there. We will have much more information on exactly the taxes that will be generated in the remaining life of the TIF district by the time we go to permanent.
So the project notes still qualify as like
Correct debt, absolutely.
incurring debt.
Pepsi's already confirmed that, and our bond council has said that as well.
And so then we would repay some of those, and if they were offset by
Grants,
grants,
we borrow
then
less,
we would
exactly.
borrow less long-term in the bond.
Yeah.
And there's no special consideration for essentially repaying that debt that's incurred in the project notes.
You mean by the lender or by the
TIF?
Oh, by TIF, by Betsy, really, because that's who
Right.
cares. No, you're allowed to refinance. That's allowed. Yep, absolutely. Yep.
Alright.
Yep. Yeah, you can't change the amortization, if you will, cannot go beyond a certain date. That's either June 30th of 35 or December 31st of 2035. So that date stays the same no matter what. So eventually you're gonna run out of time to amortize your debt, but we're not anticipating that being an issue.
You actually have that in the resolution. You
Just
say
that.
subject to early redemption or prepayment.
Yeah.
You covered that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm happy to make the motion.
Excellent. Thank you, President Paul. Second by Councilor Jang. Further discussion? Go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Brian. Okay, 4.05, lease of vendor space at 0 College Street. On the address, bike racks for bike rentals. Welcome, Cindy. If you could just give us a brief summary, that'd be great.
Sure, and I'm just gonna hit 4.05 and 4.09 at the same time, just because they're similar.
Great.
Both are vendor spaces. This came out of, this interest came out of, I don't remember some of the concern from the local bike shops with the bike share program. So they, we asked them to think creatively on how they want to be able to get in on some of the action, and they did. And both of these come from that effort. So one is right at the base of College where the bike racks, and then the other one will be a space under frame that we're currently working with zoning on. We'll have to do some zoning pieces there, but and we both of them were competitively bid.
So you move 4 to 1.
Yeah, I just was describing both. I think you're only just and sorry.
Some of them are.
Sorry. Didn't mean to confuse it. Didn't mean to confuse it. So if anybody's questions.
Great. Thank you. Cindy, questions, motion? President Paul?
I'm happy to make the motion on both. These have been extremely well vetted, and I appreciate the effort that's been made. If I can just make the motion to move items 4.05 and 4.09 and take the actions as indicated on board docs.
Excellent. Second by Councilor McGee. Councilor
I
Marlowe.
had a very brief question. I noticed that in 4.09, we're only getting 5% of the gross revenue. We're getting 10%.
We put
The
a,
other,
we put a minimum of 5% on there and they have the opportunity if they want to bid higher. And that through the RFP process and that one they did. And I just want to acknowledge Alex, listening in here too, Alec. As our operations manager down there, and he's the one who put together the zero college.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think we're ready for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
I think we're sticking with you for several
Yep.
more. Purchase of a bucket truck for the Arborist team. Anything special to say about that? It's pretty straightforward.
It's straightforward.
Wait for a motion here. Councilor McGee.
I'm happy to make the motion and the question.
Okay, great.
I'll make the motion as written.
Second by Councilor Jang. Back to you, Councilor McGee.
So I understand from the memo that the funds that we're using, the Greenbelt. Getting the exact name of it right now.
That's it.
Okay, so that is. The funds have been set aside. Over the last few years, anticipating making this purchase, and they would normally go to something else.
That's correct. So they've been saving, kind of being. Just careful with the spending of funds, knowing that that second bucket truck is one that have to be funded out of there.
Okay,
That was, I guess, one where when they purchased one at some point, it was indicated that that was gonna be the expectation is that the department would have to come up with the funds to replace
okay,
that one. So they've been setting money aside and that green belt fund is a portion of the street tax. And that's been, the funding on that has been, it's a little bit less than we're hoping for in the future years, but that'd be something we'll just work on. With the administration.
okay.
You're welcome.
Councilor Jang.
It didn't cost so much.
You know, I don't know, because most of the time the city will lease and not purchase. And also knowing that, you know, electric department have this type of trucks. The BPRW has this type of truck. Like, how can we save this for $300,000, knowing that they won't use it like summer?
They actually use it, let me just clarify, they use it year round. We have a contract with BPD and our crews clear trees all winter long. So they're doing the lines for BPD, so they do work year round with the bucket trucks. Our trucks are smaller than BEDs because we're doing city streets. So unfortunately, it's not the same size trucks. But the lease part, I have to be honest, that's kind of I went with a recommendation of what was, to
Councilor Jang is
purchase.
basically saying most of, in recent years, hasn't always been the case, but in recent years, the bulk of many of our vehicle purchases have been through, vehicle acquisitions have been through a lease. Why is this one being purchased outright?
I believe that is because it has been taking us. Because of supply chain issues, it is taking quite a while to receive the actual vehicles when we go to lease. And I'm happy to provide more details, but once we once we create the lease, everyone's paying on it, regardless of whether they have taken the vehicle or not. And as the rates go up, it's making less and less sense to have people and departments paying for vehicles that they don't have yet. And so it is my understanding we don't have to make payments until we receive the bucket truck. So we don't want to be having to pay for the bucket truck until we get it. Yes.
Happy to support it, but I mean, let's also try to find ways to utilize existing city equipment. Like, you know, what mechanism can we bring? Because the argument around fire trucks are bigger than fire trucks, but DD trust. DD also just. They said this is a switch. They can go from who's ways that you can. See.
I appreciate that, and as one of, I see at least 4 or 5 people maybe on the fleet committee who are in this room. The fleet committee is not well funded. This was a difficult decision that required a lot of lobbying from Cindy, because we are very cognizant of the fact that we, as much as possible, need to share vehicles. We don't want to invest in new vehicles unless there's a strong need. So just to reassure you, like, we are completely on the same page. If at all possible, to share, refurbish, that is what we are absolutely trying to do.
We don't have one.
Yeah, we said no to BCA.
Or you wanted a bucket truck?
They wanted
All that public
No,
art.
we need vans.
We said no to the BCA.
We have tremendous need. I'm not gonna argue it now.
Clearly, yes.
Support Cindy.
Yeah, what you don't see are all the ones we said no to.
Okay, very good. Sounds like we're ready. Had a motion,
Yeah.
we're ready to go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Right.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Redstone Cottage Restoration Contract Amendment.
That was the reason why we had to move the other one up earlier. So this project is, as everybody realizes, the front end of it we've been working on. And the contractor, we're already under permit, contractors there, the contractor could continue. So that's why we are quickly turning this around so we don't lose the contractor to go off to another project. So we brought this forward. So this is an amendment to the contract, and it was in the original bid that they gave us. So we don't have to rebid that portion. And it's that, you know the details because you just talked about it with the $2 million one, but if anybody has any questions, feel happy to answer them. But we're really excited about being able to wrap this project up. And I'm so pleased with the work that Barrington has done.
That's okay. Make the motion as recommended.
Thank you, President Paul. It's our second by Council Barlow. Further discussion? Go ahead.
I just have one question. First of all, thank you for showing me the cottage, and it's impressive work that's been done there. Will this complete the cottage, or will there be additional work that needs to be funded in the future?
It'll pretty much complete it. I mean, they'll be trying to think if. Yeah, it's hard to think that, like, if there isn't something down the line that I'm not envisioning for the project, but that's pretty much it for the cottage. But again, I feel like I want to leave myself some window for something I didn't even think about that we wanted to do there.
But all the work that was originally contemplated and.
Pretty much. I mean, we've done
engineering
some
that.
value engineering. I mean,
Right.
even when you add this all up, it's still not that full. I mean, we made some different choices along the way. But substantially, we will get what we're hoping.
Okay, I think we are ready for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Exciting. Thank you, Cindy,
Yeah,
for
thank you.
your team's work on this project. It's going to be a great one when it's done. Change the way the public engages the conservation programs and the parks programs, great community space. So
Yeah.
it's exciting. It's advancing. Okay. Almost done with parks items. Authorization to accept grant funds for the Calahan Park Shared Use Path.
I have the notes in front of me because this one is Sophie's project, who's on vacation, so I'm happy for her. Basically, as you've read the memo, the key part for this is it's something the community has been asking for. You may have remembered the drawing of the crosswalk that the community did in I think it was paint that they did across the crosswalk there. So we're able to, the DPW put that crosswalk in. So now we'll actually be able to connect when you go across there, you'll be able to connect to a sidewalk, which then leads to our playground to make it accessible. And then that then leads to the parking lot. So we'll actually have an accessible access point to the playground to our parking lot. So it was really exciting, and it is something that with our Calahan comprehensive plan that we did, when this grant opportunity came up, we were able to jump right on that because we had a plan in place. And we had an amazing grant, Nicole and team doing the grant, so.
Great, thank you, Cindy. Are we ready for a motion? 4.08. So Councilor Chang, thank you. Second by Councilor McGee. Any discussion? Go to vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Cindy. Okay, we did 4.09, so we're now on to 4.10, which is the reclassification of one position in the assessor's office. And I think I saw there's Tony, John on this as well. There's John. Could one of you tee this up quickly? Go ahead, John, you're muted though.
Hi, thank you. I'm unmuted. We're asking for this position to have a step increase in pay. This position over time has become more heavily involved in revaluation of properties, a little less so focused on administration. So there's been some changes to the job description, and it's deserved. I think it's on par with other properties that are other similar type of jobs in the city.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.
Any questions or discussion, or ready for a motion?
Was just wondering if there is a retroactive pay? Was not clear on the-
Yes, there is. Yep, go ahead, Tony.
Yes, we have retroactive pay going back to May 1st of last year. We made that a year from when this will hopefully be approved. And that was decided in collaboration with HR and the assessor's office and AFSCME as well, because there was a little uncertainty as to when these significant new and permanent duties were added to the role. So in good faith, we wanted to go back a year. So that was our suggestion from HR to do so.
Great.
Yeah, it's just that I believe that exchange some email with John Beckery, and he also know about the staff in person here, and was just wondering with the AFSCME, we won't be coming back with no disagreements. Will there be like some disagreements with the staff in hand or AFSCME, or we all set? This is just ready. You did the groundwork.
We did,
Yes.
yes. Director of HR, Karen Durfee, in collaboration with John and Catherine and myself, we collaborated with AFSCME on this. So hopefully it is all set.
Should not come back. The reason it was pulled before was so that we could come back this time. Should be fine.
And I'm speaking from before when it comes to here.
Yes,
Some emails and stuff.
yes.
Yeah, we ready for motion? Councilor McGee?
Happy to make the motion.
Thank you. Excellent, thank you, Councilor, second by Councilor Jang. Discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we're 2/3 of the way through here. 4.11, authorization to execute contract for the Great Streets Main Street Public Art Project with Lydia Kern, Nancy Winship, Milliken Studio LLC, Pixel Patch Creative LLC, and Wow House. And I see we have Olivia as well as Sarah.
There's a bunch of us.
All right, we got a big group here, so great.
Yeah. Colin, you're the one who knows the most, but we're here if you need it.
Another exciting project coming to a key milestone here. Why don't you guys tee it up first?
Yeah, so apologies, I'm a little cloudy on some stuff. My first day back up from vacation after 2.5 weeks, but so the Grace Street's Main Street project had done some extensive review of over 130 proposals from artists all over the nation for the public art for Main Street. Got some really amazing proposals. Narrowed it down over the last several weeks. Ended up interviewing 10 or 15, 15 and I ended up with the selection that you see here in front of you today. So we're confident that these selections meet the objectives of the procurement process and the vision for Main Street. We would look to enter into design contracts with these artists right away, so we can get that ball rolling. Those designs could be complete by the time the project is set to go out to bid by the end of June, and then to keep it on track through the fabrication phase for construction later this year. So yeah, essentially we're seeking to go into phase 1 of these contracts, which is again just the design phase for these contracts immediately, and then I think the plan is we would come back for the further authorization for the fabrication phase. So, you have anything to add?
The only thing I would add was, this is sort of an unusual situation where we're looking to end your permission or your approval to enter into these contracts that are below your threshold. But the expected secondary step is up to and approaching and beyond your threshold. So currently we're only looking into smaller design contracts, but want to keep you all informed of the process as they get significantly bigger over the course of the next few months.
Great, thank you. Okay, so floor is open for questions, motion. Go ahead, Councilor Chen.
Thank you. Welcome back.
Thank you.
I mean, when we talk about these numbers, 8,000, 14,000, 2,000, like, what is it attached to? Like, what the design itself, where is it? Can I look at it and say, oh, this is worth 20,000, it's not 8,000? Or as part of our package?
Yeah.
Or have you talked to other councils? Committee, subcommittee, but I didn't see any.
These are components of the larger $500,000 budget, and we are currently hiring the artists to develop designs that are integrated into the larger BPRW construction bid packet. So a lot of the footings and construction needs, installation needs can be absorbed into the city's scope of work.
I think it's a cool part about this is there's really an attempt to integrate the, like, like taking a step now, authorizing the beginning of the expenditure of funds. We can really build it into the design plans and really integrate it into the construction. If you think of like the best public art project that it's still my favorite after all these years that I've ever been involved with, although we've had some great ones since, is where I met Sarah Katz for the first time back at the airport like 20 years ago now with the Skylight project. I don't know 50, how many years? It is probably pushing 20 years, right? And there, the architect, the artist got involved with the architects during the construction process and I think really made a special piece that I see a similar intent here to really get these artists in on the ground floor and make these, they're not just gonna be sort of something stuck in there, but they're really integrated into it. Yeah.
I think it's important both from that integration standpoint as well as just making sure everything jives with the construction plans, making sure everything fits where it needs to go and really citing these so that we're not coming back during the construction phase with change orders and changes to design to try to like just retrofit something. And so. Ashley.
Okay, great. Hi, Ashley, thanks.
Hi, sorry. I was just going to add in addition to all of these really great points, I think it's also good to just remember that this is a piece of our TIF district. And so one of the reasons to also come before you guys tonight, asking for essentially a phase 1 approval is so that while these are do the design work, we can confirm and make sure that everything is within our TIF district boundaries, which will be a requirement for these costs to be considered eligible down the road. So that's just another piece of this big puzzle that is this project and the whole Gray Street project. I just wanted to add that note.
Great. Actually, another safeguard in making sure we spend TIF money the right way. She is our single point of accountability in some ways, getting stuff right here. So, Mark, go ahead. Sorry, Councilor Barlow.
My question's about, have these, there are 4 artists that you want to engage, have they given you like approximate budgets? Because so we'll know that the total amount incurred won't be that expensive.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
And there is a leftover, aside from these contracts, there's about $25,000, I believe, in leftover funds that will be utilized for contingency if needed.
That's a change.
Not clear, is this art design we're talking about, or how the art will integrate with the project itself?
Both are needed. That time to do it. They've already done their conceptual designs, but this is really kind of fine tuning that design as well as working with the project team to ensure that, again, we integrate it, we cite it properly, and we're integrating it properly into the construction plans. So that's going to be a lot of collaborating between us, the artists or engineers, really collaborative.
So you have seen the conceptual art design, when it's ready, how it's going. Right, that's what I was asking.
Oh, sorry.
Like, how do we see it too? Like, we know that this is what we're voting.
Back in November, we put out the call for qualifications, and that's where 138 artists from around the country submitted just a sort of very preliminary resume and history of work. And from that 135, the selection panel selected 15 who we paid $1,000 to generate a proposal with a bespoke idea for this project in the street. And from those 15, the selection panel selected these 4 projects.
I think he might be asking too when they can see those concepts.
At least bring them to facts.
You're looking for the images.
Yeah.
Image.
Yes.
Yes.
Or,
Which is
sorry. It's okay. If you.
They were not in the packet.
Yeah.
I have paper copies of all the proposals, and they were on our website for public comment. So they were all available to see. And
Sorry, I apologize. I missed that. I think do we have the ability to?
Yep.
Maybe do. I don't think the Board of Finance intent is to like substitute for all the public process that has gone on to get to this point, but I think it's totally fair for you guys to want to know where it was headed with this. So why don't we give?
I can just join the Zoom meeting and share my screen.
Do you need the link?
Nope, I had it up ready.
Great. Do you want, we could, we've been going for a long time. I could give people like a 5-minute recess if you. It might take a minute.
I believe I'll be ready.
Seconds, okay.
Yeah. I am disabled from sharing.
Oh, you have to be more enabled now.
Okay. So. So, start with Wow House, which is a artist duo out of Northern California. They produced a very, their proposal had many different smaller features that we were able to choose from. And the selection panel was interested in selecting the snail family piece, also known as Magnus, which is a collection of 3 stone cut snails that shown here in front of basically North Star. But we are proposed the location in front of the courthouse building. It will have a phosphorescent aggregate included in the concrete around it to give it a 24 hours a day engagement, and is meant to be very family friendly and everyone can climb on it. And it should be robust and exciting. Lydia Kearns anthology single walkthrough. That's actually a picture of it there. Or a mock-up of it. It will be an 11-foot tall resin arch that incorporates dried, locally harvested wildflowers and plants that she will have sourced and preserved through a series of public engagement programs within the community that people will be able to, it draws on the quilting tradition of Vermont and is very exciting. It is proposed to be along the north side of Main Street near City Hall Park. In that block there, just have a.
She's a local.
And she's local and an emerging artist.
Was she the one that was using stuff that was from Abnaki? Was that the one? I read some of that. I don't know, maybe not.
I'm not sure.
It could have been.
Yeah.
I just go ahead.
Nancy Winship Milliken, who is another local artist out of Shelburne, is going to make Lake Bones Archway, which is a little bit harder to envision, but it will be a large post and lintel structure over the
Over the bike.
not over the bike lane,
Adjacent
but
to the
over
bike
the pedestrian green belt.
That's where.
And involve hopefully plantings of wildflowers on both sides and hanging large scale pieces of wood. And meant to evoke a barn and evoke the history of Burlington as one of the largest logging ports in North America for a long time, as well as evoke themes of stewardship of the lake moving forward.
She has a piece at the Shelburne Museum that's very similar. So I think she had a photo.
I think she did that one. these are a little bit different, or sort of standing single archways. And she'll make a row of 4 of them. And 3 of them. And then when it comes, it'll be block by block, which is a tessellated monolith that will be in the sidewalks. Sort of has themes of Legos and is about communities built of different components all coming together into one cohesive thing. He's also a local artist out of Richmond and works with a partner, Brian Brush, out of Montana. Their proposal also incorporates smaller satellite pieces. So we're hoping that this piece will help draw people from Church Street down to Pine Street and make it more of a corridor or pedestrian friendly corridor. Yeah, great creation between the 2 streets.
Indeed. Sorry, just sorry if I missed this. Did you summarize just the process, the selection process for how we get to this?
I'm happy to do that. In November of this year, or previous to November, DPW and BCA worked together to create a call to artists. And in November 1st, we put out a national call through a variety of media. And convened a selection committee based on the design team, the DPW, local residents, artists, and business owners along the entire corridor. And they evaluated 135 applications. Selected 15 proposals for phase 2, and from that 15 proposals, found projects that totaled the $500,000 budget that we had available, which is a little bit unusual from our perspective. Select a single piece, but having this budget that we wanted to commission multiple pieces of work that all added up to that budget was an interesting puzzle to put together. That culminated on the 27th of last month. And then we brought it before, as per the new public art in public places guidelines that were adopted last summer. We brought it before the BCA Public Art Committee and then the BCA Board of Advisors, and then brought it to the mayor's office after that. And now I brought it to you.
Great, thanks for going through all that. I hope that clarifies what's happening here. Great. Are we ready?
Thank you. So I just have one question, aside from the fact that it's really cool, and is that maybe you can help me in figuring out how to get this gets to 500,000. Because when I added up, it's much more than that. So I'm just trying to understand feedback, 540. So what I did, just so you know, is that I took the 66,696, which is in the motion, which is phase 1.
Yeah.
And then I went to the document that you have, and added up the 90,600 for the current, the 99,000 for WOW, the other 2 amounts for 145,140, and that does not equal 500,000.
66 is part of.
So that's, well, it says it's phase 1, phase 2. So what that assumes is that they are separate. Phase 1 is phase 1, is phase 2. So I guess the only thing that I'm saying is that that isn't what you should be saying, if that's not what it is. So 500,000, it doesn't, it definitely does not add up to 500,000. So it's significantly more than that. So that's all I'm saying is that that is not clear communication.
Okay.
We'll update that communication between
Thank you.
next Monday to clarify that. I have seen a summary that didn't add the 500, so.
So I have not seen anything other than what you've given us.
So we'll update that. Thank you for pointing that out.
Other than that, is you, and someone already made a motion?
I don't believe so.
Well, I will.
Thank you. Great. Second by Councilor McGee. Discussion.
And I believe that this is, the corridor is so long and this seems to be very small. I think it would be good to identify all the buildings and add more arts. That's just my.
Suggesting
Increasing. Yes.
Well, we're going to something else.
Yeah.
If you would have 66 more, just kidding. But no, I agree with you. I mean, I think it would be great, but this funding allows only 1%.
Yeah, I mean, I feel, you know, and the theme, yes, this is about diversity, you know, it's about, you know, Vermont history, it was about plants, right? I think we need to find something else. Or that is also something bigger than all of these small pieces.
I think the nice thing about Main Street is that, you know, there's gonna be so much space for this kind of, you know, opportunities, even if it's like performance art or something like that. We're gonna have that plaza there on these 2 blocks. There's gonna be a lot of landscaping, which is almost kind of like a form of art as we see it. So as far as permanent installations, I think we're kind of in a tough spot right now, but I do think there's gonna be a lot of opportunity via the space on the corridor in the future to add maybe, you know, semi-permanent or, you know, temporary things.
And there's also, I think, other amenities that are in the landscape.
Yeah.
Benches and swings and exciting light posts.
Yeah.
And other things that are.
I agree.
Appreciate the sentiment, Councilor Jang, and don't disagree. It's all would be great to have even more. I do think. You know, we have. It's somewhat rare to have a municipal ordinance that commits us to making sure there is investment every time we do a project like this. So you'll have similar proposals coming back for the, you know, earlier in the night, we approved the TIF moving forward. There'll be much more substantial additional art installation on those 9 blocks. So I think over time, we are changing the character of the downtown to have more public art in really prominent ways. So it's a good start. If not, maybe everything will be completely dream. Are we ready for a vote? Great. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And thank you, College, for being fast on your feet to get those up there. I think that was exciting to see. Okay, 4.12 agreement for CAD services between Burlington and South Burlington. Welcome, Chief LaChance.
It's not nearly as exciting as our.
Well, thank you for your patience, sticking around until 7:15. It's important day, important collaboration.
So yeah, this is a collaboration with the city of South Burlington. When we updated our dispatch services to a computer-aided dispatch in Burlington, which has been really a game changer. It was always the intention to expand that so that we could have capability to utilize, you know, efficient services with outside communities in the same system. It'll allow us to really be efficient during times of high stress on the emergency system, emergency response system. And instead of, you know, making phone calls and things like that, allow us to just see where units are and dispatch closest unit. So this is a shared agreement with the city of South Burlington that allows them to utilize some space on our servers for really is the only way that they can connect services is to do it like a connection with the server. I worked with CAO Barker on valuation to have a fair valuation for space, which covers maintenance and server upgrades. And it's fair for both municipalities. So that's been added to the agreement as well. But base cost for this connection is zero to us. It's City of South Burlington is paying Pilot Technologies, all the fees associated, and we will be collecting $7,500 a year from the City of South Burlington for maintenance and upgrades to our servers with a 3% or CPI, whatever is lower, increase per year, so that we can keep up with the cost of inflation.
Thank you, Chief. Go ahead, Councilman Gee.
I'm happy to make the motion as recommended.
Second by Councilor Chang, thank you. Further discussion?
I just had one question. For how long is this agreement for?
The agreement, we didn't put a sunset date on the agreement. It is able to be terminated, I believe it's 6 months, with 6 months notice. But it's not, it's kind of, I don't know, I tried to make it so that we didn't have to go through it every number of years, that we put a valuation on it that keeps up with inflation, and we should be able to keep it almost indefinitely if us or the city of South Burlington decides to terminate, we are able to do that based on the agreement.
Okay, are we ready for a motion? Yeah. Sorry, ready for a vote? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. And our last item of section 4, we still have two more approval items, but less than section 4 is creation of one new position, the Assistant Director of Alternative Response within the Police Department. Thank you for being here, Chief Murad, to lead this. Maybe could you summarize where we are on this and what this is?
Yes, and I'm afraid I don't have the paper in front of me, so please, if I look at the phone, that's where I downloaded the things from Board Docs, so they're on my in my books on the phone. Thank you very much for having me here today. The position is the Assistant Director of Alternative Response. It's a position that the mayor has been speaking about for most of this year, the calendar year so far. It was announced early in January. It's something we've been discussing as the police department has transitioned into a new kind of form wherein sworn officers are no longer as large a proportion of our overall headcount as they once were. And we have developed other kinds of professional resources in the department. We've come to the recognition that we need somebody who can oversee those pieces, can be the person who is going to also oversee the new thrust of alternative response that's in the police department, and who is going to be the external liaison to any number of partners with whom we work, whether that's at the state level or the local level or the non-governmental organization level. And this position is basically proposed in order to address all those needs. It was graded by Human Resources as a 24. It's envisioned as a position that is equivalent to the deputy chiefs. In other words, a person who sits on what we colloquially call mahogany row in the police department, the row of offices where the chief's office is, the two deputy chiefs. And this position would sit there as well. It does not have authority over sworn officers as the two deputy chief positions do. It cannot. But it does have insight into the parts of the department that we've built up with regard to alternative resource. That includes the community support liaisons, that includes our domestic violence victim advocate, that includes our victims advocates, one of whom is partly employed also by CEDO, so we share that position, and includes the community support supervisor, or CSS. It would also include at some point the crisis team that we are attempting to develop and have been working on for some time. And it would include all of those relationships as well. So working with entities that deal with homelessness or houselessness in Burlington, working with entities that deal with mental health, working with entities that deal with substance use disorder, a stronger representation for the police department on CompStat, for example. And so that is sort of all part and parcel to what the position is envisioned to include.
Great, thank you. Good summary. And yes, that's right. I have been talking about this a lot. The public safety plan that we released at the beginning of the year did include this concept. I have long believed a positive enhancement of the department to have some additional senior civilian leadership at the department. This would be a big step in that direction. We did consult with the police commission both in advance of that announcement and received enthusiastic conceptual support for the creation of this position, and have had some exchange with the police commission over since about a week into April 11th or so, in advance of this advance of bringing this forward. And we have Jordan Riddell led that effort, and there has been some incorporation of feedback from the commission into the document. They have not deliberated publicly on this, and I guess I would say we certainly wouldn't. This isn't the end of the process. We want to hoping to get this recommendation from the Board of Finance tonight. Further discussion, I'm sure, will be on deliberative and further discussion and approval from the City Council next week. And then we start a listing process and interview process will be sometime before the person is in place. So I see, I'm eager to. I think we really need this. I think we have done. I think it's been a really exciting element of the last couple of years of the way in which we have added alternative resources. I think it's been one that there's been a lot of consensus and support behind. I am confident we will get more out of those investments we have already made and the ones that we're on the cusp of making with the crisis response team. If we have a senior position like this to assist the chief, to really lead for the department with the chief's oversight, the coordination and collaboration of all these resources. I think we can't expect these very substantial amount of investments that we've made to be fully impactful unless we have kind of this dedicated senior oversight to it. So that's how we got here. The floor is open for discussion. Councilor Media.
Thank you, Chief Murad. I appreciate folks engaging on the email that I sent earlier regarding this position. I can't support it tonight for a number of reasons, but I think the most pressing in terms of our deliberation here tonight is the lack of engagement with the police commission. My concern is with a number of new commissioners having been on board recently, to not have the opportunity to have this discussion in an open forum, to hear from others, because this is a different position than I normally see in the police department. And I think it makes sense for us to take time to make these decisions, to move in this direction, to make sure we're doing it right and not going too quickly in direction that not everyone's on. My other reason for not supporting this tonight, and I think reason that I may not support it, even with that additional engagement, is that I continue to believe, as I've said in the past, that these civilian positions should not be housed in the police department. I think the intention of us reallocating resources towards alternative responses was to take those responses out of the police department and outside of the control of the police department. And so I continue to have concerns that while we are investing in alternative responses, that money is finding its way back into the police department. And so I will leave it there for right now. And other folks ask questions.
I want to hear from others. Of course, I do. I just want to quickly respond to a couple of things there. Again, there was communication since April 11th with the police commission about this coming forward. We've had no direct communication from the police commission that there was any sense of insufficiency of that engagement. In fact, we received from the chair a written response with 4 suggestions, which were reviewed and ones that were agreed to. Most substantive ones were agreed to and worked into the job description. The others, and happy to share the feedback. We didn't see a way to work all of it in, but we did our best to incorporate their feedback. Did not hear from the commission any sense of concern that we were moving too quickly on this, or they had not been given sufficient time. The first I heard of that was today from Councilor McGee. Happy to work over the course of the week to get further feedback from the commission and make further amendments when the final approval will come next Monday. I'm hoping we don't have to delay the process at this point. We can see what happens over the course of the week and see if it's ready by the time we have, of course, the final approval next Monday. With respect to that, I want to respectfully disagree with some of Councilor McGee's characterization of what we've done. And certainly, I disagree. It was articulated that the city has taken action, that we've taken action to remove resources from the police. I don't think that is maybe that wasn't what was said exactly. My sense is there has been discussion throughout the process of the last couple of years as we've been considering alternative resources almost at every step of the way. There has been discussion and a proposal of trying to find, consideration of whether adding these resources in some other part of the city made sense. And to some degree, we have done a little bit of that. We did add these parks rangers, for example, was a place, a department that got some additional investment. There was discussion of and some effort to explore whether citing some of these resources at the CJC made sense. That was evaluated and considered, and as the subsequent approvals came forward, we've had Lacey here speaking, and we have made a series of decisions together, usually with broad consensus, to ultimately cite these resources at the police. So now what I'm saying, and I believe the chief is saying, is that if you want us to, we've created a lot of these resources. If we're going to get the most value from these major investments that we've made, we are currently running these programs out of the police department. We are well past the decision to run the crisis response team out of the police department as well. I understand it's a little different. It is different when we're talking about doing this as an in-house service as opposed to managing a contract, but we debated this over a year ago and made it a decision that the way Cahoots did it, the way others did it, is to have these contracts managed by the police department. So we've kind of crossed this bridge again and again. I don't see any viable alternative if the council wants these programs managed well, don't have another structure for doing that. So I understand the discomfort, but I think we've made a series of decisions together that's gotten us to this point. Unless we're going to really reverse that and go in a different direction, I think the police department needs this position. So thank you for the opportunity to share that perspective. Is there further council discussion? Council Bylaw.
Thank you. I'm happy to support this tonight. I know that we well, one of the things we've heard about as we sort of reimagine the department and how we resource it is one of the problems that we've had, I think, is to create that liaison to the other agencies and things that are working in partnership with the police department. We've seen this even in discussions we've had in the Parks, Arts and Culture Committee, where we've talked about the coordination between the Parks Rangers and the department and how they interoperate to be most effective. And so I see this position as being essential to having that efficient integration, especially in the improving but still sort of staff-starved environment we find ourselves as we try to deliver public safety services to the city. So I'm happy to support this tonight.
Thanks, Councilor Brown.
May I?
Oh, yes, sorry, Councilor Grant, go ahead. And then we'll come back to Councilor Jay.
Thank you. So I have a few things. I feel that the position of the police commission has been misrepresented. We have given, I still say we, the police commission had given in the past input with regards to job descriptions, but to say that we enthusiastically approve this position, that is not true. I don't even think we've seen the name of the position as it is being brought forth now. So for example, the use of the word alternative, one of the things that's come up is that we need to get away from using alternative because these positions are part of our community safety response. So they're not alternatives. They may be different responses for different types of incidents, but we shouldn't look at them as alternatives. I'm just very concerned because through some of the questions that Councilor McGee asked, we're only finding out today that the Howard Center had dropped out of the conversation and is not taking the lead anymore with regards to the cahoots model. So that's very disturbing that information wasn't actually fully shared. There's been a lot of issues around the cahoots model in terms of how long it's taking and the lack of information. And Mayor, I know that, you know, personally myself, I come to you sometimes at your coffees saying what's going on, what's going on, what's going on. So we've not been hearing. So part of the concern is do we really know what is going on? How is this going to, what is it going to look like? There's just all this information that has not been vetted yet. And I too question the appropriateness at this time of, I mean, if we're going to put this position in the police department, does that mean cahoots is going in the police department? And I think there'd be a lot of community questions about that. And I think the comfort level for some in the community might not be there for that, at least not without other information. I mean, we now know we have funding, and it took a long time to get to that point, but we're not anyplace else. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Grant. I had Councilor Jang in the queue and then President Paul, and why don't you guys speak, and then I would speak to react to a couple of things for a second.
Thank you. And was just wondering, I was going to add and not knowing that second was been dropped. I'm not really particularly concerned about where this position goes. That's not my concern. My concern is more about the grading. Looking at the job description, looking at this person, what he or she would be responsible for, and which is 5,500%, or it's 80. Was not really.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at as I said, I have it on this instead. Yes, I think so too. Yes, the range is 88,000 to 105 at the top step. So that's over the period of a very long career.
Yeah. But now hearing all of this new information, I was just wondering if we can delay this voting on this tonight and maybe moving it until we hear about all the details that were shared here. The police commission was not consulted or did not give agreement is brought out in order for us to better understand. It's just a process.
Go ahead, Crystal.
Thanks. So I think there's probably because of the fact that there's a lot of things that are going on at the same time, and greatly to our credit as a city, we are trying to work very hard to move a lot of initiatives to get forward at the same time. And when that happens, sometimes things get sort of lost, either lost in translation or people aren't completely looped in to what's going on. The Cahoots program is not good, has not dropped out and is not going anywhere, except that we're going to make it a reality. However, the way that is going to be done, because of the inability of the Howard Center to really completely do what we're hoping and we had hoped that they would do, and what the RFP said, means that we have to pivot and go in a different direction. I think that there probably is a lot of argument to be made that it's a better direction, because it's going to be something that we have control over. It's something that we are going to have the data on. It's going to be a much more transparent process. And I think that there are great advantages. You know, sometimes things sort of work out for the best, but you don't know that. And so, and I would imagine that others don't know that. The only reason I know that is because of a meeting that happened late last week with the two people who brought forward the Cahoots model. This was Shay Totten and Robin Friedman Wider, who are both very supportive of the direction that we are going. But you don't know that. Why don't you know that? Because you haven't been told that. And so is it, and I think that's the same thing that Stephanie is also feeling, is that yes, in full fairness, the information that they were given and that went to the police commission, I believe, is the information that we had at the time. This development happened a week ago, a week and a half ago. That information was not known to them when they responded to the RFP, to the job description. So no one has done anything wrong. We have all tried to the best of our ability to do everything correctly. They were consulted, but they weren't consulted with all the information that's available today. Neither were you. So I think in fairness to everyone, and I truly hope, because I think that this is a position that is absolutely necessary. One of the other things that you may bring up, and I apologize if I'm stealing your thunder from you, is that there is a plan that was proposed how to address the issue of non-police oversight or advisory oversight in the Cahoots plan. And that is another level of advisory input.
That's true.
And, you know, again, I apologize because we know that I know this is something that you came up with, and I don't want to take it from you, but I'm just saying that I think those are all things that we don't all know. And I think they might be things for Councillor McGee that might be compelling, that you might vote yes. And I would hope that you would vote yes, because I do think that this is something that absolutely is needed. But that being said, I would prefer, and I will make a motion that that we ask the administration, the CAO, to call a special Board of Finance meeting for next Monday at I don't know, 5 p.m. where we discuss and go to a vote on this issue. The police commission is meeting tomorrow. They will have an opportunity to hopefully be briefed on all of this and give additional and updated input. That's not my motion. I'm getting carried away, but my motion is that we delay this vote until next Monday, when we call a special Board of Finance meeting to vote on this item.
Thank you, President Paul. Thank you for all that thoughtful review of the situation. I don't have an objection to the motion, so you want to second it?
I second.
We will use the week to, as best we can, try to get further consensus around this. I think that ultimately is something that, given all that has led up to this point, and I think actually shared area of belief in the programs in a lot of ways that we should, and hopefully it will be something we can do with broad consensus. So, go ahead.
If I could just simply add, the other thing also, I didn't have Councilor Moran and Councilor Chang were not on this email, Councilor T, yes, I keep thinking Jim, sorry. Was on this email was that the plan had been to bring all of this information to the council at our next meeting. In retrospect, it probably should have come sooner. So that's on me and no one else. So just wanted to put that out there.
First of all, I certainly don't think you should feel like you need to be, you've done anything slow or bringing this forward. It has been very much a fluid situation, less than a week since some of the key conversations took place on this. I do my best to reach out to Councilor McGee since he's been very engaged on this issue in the past. Apologize, Councilor Jang, that didn't give you a heads up before the discussion. And we'll do more of that over the course of next week. And the fact that the commission has a meeting this week is well timed. Commissioner Grant, I'm hoping you're able to follow everything that's happening. I think we're on the cusp of postponing further action until next Monday. See your hand is up. Do you have an urgent comment to get in before we make a vote to essentially postpone until next Monday?
Yes, please. Just a general comment about just an ongoing issue around communication. So I just feel like someone has to own the communication piece so that the commission and all counselors are kept up to date. I still feel like we haven't fully vetted this. Now, maybe this additional information that will be sent to the commission and then sent to, I assume, the rest of the council might fill in some holes here, but I just feel right now that it's not vetted, and I do feel that there were some things said that really misrepresent what was communicated, and I'm confident that having attended up to the last meeting, and I know now that I'm no longer getting anything, but I still am in touch with the commission, and I am going to be serving on the Public Safety Committee for the council. I just keep feeling like communication, even though it's constantly asked for, we keep dropping the ball. And if we can somehow talk about that and have someone have ownership over this, have ownership to make sure that everybody that needs to know what's going on and has to make decisions and votes around it, and has to then in turn be responsive to the community about their questions, it would just be much appreciated. I feel we just continue to fail in this area. Thank you.
Mayor?
Yeah, so Commissioner Grant, happy to keep talking to you about communication. The administration works very hard to communicate on an enormous number of things, and I think there was a lot of communication leading up until tonight. Things are moving quickly. We're trying to get stuff done. We're trying to move the community forward, and we will continue to do our best in communicating. I stand by the point that we did consult with the commission. We consulted with the commission chair about the announcement of the public safety plan, and did get positive feedback about the concept of this assistant director position. And I stand by the fact that there was substantial communication with the chair in advance of putting this on the agenda and having discussion tonight, and that the late change that is emerging of that we may be bringing more of the crisis response team in-house only reinforces the need for this position. So on that, the only late, not fully communicated information just makes more important the need to urgently create this position. So I will not, I would respectfully request you to be careful with you know, it's a hard thing to hear, a failure of communication. There's a lot of people working very hard to do our best here, and to have that described as a failure is not something that I accept as a characterization of what happened here. So
Okay, oh, I'm sorry, point of clarification.
Councilor Grant,
Hold on, yeah, hold on. So I am not saying the
Councilor
word.
Grant, are you asking to be recognized again? Like we need to, there are other people in the room here. Would you like to be recognized for another comment? There are other people who wish to speak. We had President Paul in the queue ahead of time.
I just wanted to say in general, but also to Councilor Grant, who's joining us by Zoom, that I did send out an email. I'm happy to forward that to you. I think there's just, as I say, I don't think there's anything at all even remotely nefarious going on, or a lack of transparency. It's just a lot of people working at the same time. And I think that this motion will address that issue. And going forward, I agree with you. We just simply always have to work harder. No matter what we do, we always have to work harder to be more, you know, to make sure that everyone is dialed in. I've made the motion. I think it was seconded, and unless you want to recognize others. Thank you.
Councilor Grant, I see your hand is up again. Is there something that needs to be further? You know, it's almost 8 o'clock. Do you want to speak again before we have a vote to postpone this conversation until next week?
I understand that, and I'm sorry, I'm not sure if my previous statement was heard. All I was trying to say was, I did not say the work was a failure. I feel that's a misrepresentation of my statement. I did not say the work is a failure. What my continued concern is that the communication has at times been lacking or missing, and we need to assign a point person for the communication. So as all these pieces are moving, and as you know, something that happened last week, so it's certainly been communicated by now, we really need to have a point person to say, this is what happened today, get this out to all the stakeholders for this. But I did not criticize the work. Thank you.
I appreciate the clarification, and if I somehow misheard it, I appreciate the clarification. I misheard it, I apologize. With that, are we ready to have a vote on the motion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
I apologize. I have to go and try and zoom in for the rest of those.
Yes, thank you, Councilor. We have 2 more items. We do have 2 more items, and the first one in this section 5 of the agenda. Oakledge Universally Accessible Playground Construction Contract Amendment. Thank you, Cindy, for sticking around so late. Sorry. And want to just quickly tee this up.
Sure. I 100% confess that I forgot it was on there.
Everybody just been sticking around. Broad interest.
I will miss it otherwise. But it's what, and so I apologize that it's taking me I have to deflect for a moment. I believe this one is for adding the gate. Is that my? Yes. Okay, thank you for that. And I apologize. But I do like listening to Board of Finance. And I forgot that it was right at the end because it was Board of Finance only. So we have been a community, we've been it's been a long time since there had been a gate at Oakledge, and my understanding is actually there was a very tragic outcome the last time there was a gate at Oakledge. So we have been very cautious on adding a gate there to make sure it is one that would be a safe addition to the park. But we have had repeated interactions from neighbors, because the park, you're not allowed to park there at night. But we consistently have people that go into the park at night and race around the parking lot. And we have a lot of vandalism and such that are there. So we asked for funds at the end of last fiscal year for the assigned fund balance to go towards getting the gates for Oakledge. And so that's what we're here for. And it is one that we were able to get the contractor who's on site said they would be able to take care of it.
Wow, I hadn't followed that closely either. So can you just, it was a terrible tragedy that took place. Is this a very different design for this?
These are the ones that drop, these are they're ones that be programmed, ones that can drop down. So they're on a timer. So they're no longer, do we utilize the ones that have the swing out that you could get, someone could tragically. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Are we ready for a motion or discussion?
As indicated.
Thank you, Councilor Jang. We have a second by Councilor Barlow. Discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Councilor McGee. That I heard that. All any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And
Thank you for letting me collect myself for a moment.
Thanks for hanging in with us.
Okay, and the final item of the night, we do have is an REIB item. We have Director Kim Carson and Sydney. I'm not sure if I ever actually said your last name out loud before, Sydney. So Sydney Van Tassel joining us, and this is a contract amendment for a Juneteenth related contract. Kim, would you like to tee it up briefly?
Yes. Can everyone hear me properly? This is the first time I've called it home. Okay, thank you. Yes, just really quick. I appreciate everyone sticking around. This is basically an amendment. We're expanding the work for OK as we've lost and some staff members have moved on. They're taking more of a lead role in the rest of the management of Juneteenth and then we would be the supportive role to them. Highlights for this key responsibilities with redesigning and managing the Juneteenth website app and the app so that the attendees can find accurate information. It also allows and assures bilingual services. Lead creation and execution of social media strategies, managing and overseeing the budget to ensure that we stay within our budgetary confines, and then also managing vendor contracts, including payment of the vendors and management of those contracts. So that's what the additional money is for. So instead of us collaborating together, they would then take the lead role on that.
Great. Thank you for summarizing that, Kim. President Paul.
Make a motion to approve and authorize as recommended in board docs.
Thank you, President Paul. Is that a second by Councilor Jang? Excellent. Any discussion? Yes. Ready, Councilor Jang.
Yep, I just wanted to publicly thank Kim, Council, and both CP for allowing OK Director to come to our last IAV meeting to discuss this. And I think it would be important for people to understand this is the third year the city is going to do Juneteenth celebration, but this one is actually being managed by a local person, someone who's have roots in this community, someone who have contributed greatly to the greatness of the city of Burlington and who served also the city in so many different capacities. Also, the fact that it's the thinking around the organization this year is just amazing. It's not all over the city, but it's in one spot, which is right here in downtown, and also work in collaboration with the volunteer. I think the level of thinking of, one, you save money. I think the contract of last year probably is just, this one is let's say over $10,000. No, and this is from a local person. Know this community, care about this community, helping the city in so many different ways. And thank you for bringing that level of thinking about, celebrating diversity and celebrating unity. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Day.
Thank you, Councilor Jang. All right, if there's no further comment, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you both for zooming in and for getting this before us. And we're less than 2 months away and looking forward to the event. With that, we have the Board of Finance has concluded its business for the night. So if there's no objection, we are adjourned at 7:56 p.m.